And today, ladies and gentlemen, we bring you Gunyarupini. And she's going to tell us a little bit about how she met the devotees. So, you met the devotees in 1972, is that correct?
Yes, I met the devotees on campus in 1972. They taught me how to chant Hare Krishna.
And you were a student at that time?
Yes, I was a student at UMass.
Okay. And then they brought you to the temple, or?
Yes, they drove me to the Boston Temple, and we were just going to stay for the weekend. We got there on Saturday, and by Sunday morning I knew I wanted to surrender to and move into the temple, which I did.
So you never left?
No, I went to visit and I never left.
Okay, cool. And then after that, what were your first engagements in the temple?
Making flower garlands and stealing burfi.
So they had good burfi there, huh?
It was really good.
So I heard that you accompanied Vishnujanan on the road show. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, Vishnujanan personally asked me to join the road show because he was looking for some lady dancers, and I had some experience. So I joined the Transcendental road show at that point, and much to the chagrin of the Boston Temple president and the other devotees.
They didn't like that idea?
No, they didn't like the idea because that meant that Vishnujanan basically stole me away from doing service at the Boston Temple, and instead I had become affiliated and a member of the Transcendental Roadshow.
I see. And you had some instances with Vishnujanan. Can you tell us about those, please?
Yes, actually when I was with Vishnujanan, I was very, very shy devotee, so he taught me how to play kartals, and he also brought me one time on door-to-door book distribution, and it was pretty amazing to see how Vishnujanan could convince somebody out of so-called the blue to take a book and to say the Hare Krishna name.
Tell us a little bit more about that experience.
That's all I can
You don't remember any of the lines he used or anything? Okay. There was another instance where you were on the bus with Vishnujanan.
Yes, we were in New York City, and we were staying at the Old Henry Street Temple, and the road show actually ended up about 6 blocks away with the 3 buses outside of what was called the burned out old Fulton Ferry Bank. And so every day we used to travel to the temple to see Radha Govinda, but then we had to travel back so that we could do the artik for Radha Damodar. One day we were driving back, and we were in a hurry. And Vishnujanan used to like to stand with, because it was a hot summer, Vishnujanan used to stand with his danda in the stairwell with the door open as the bus was going over all the what is it called? Potholes. And one day he flew out of the bus unexpectedly. And we all turned as the bus came to a screeching halt, and within seconds we saw him tumbling, rolling, losing hold of his danda, and then the bus stopped as if time stood still. And Vishnujanan, after a few seconds, got up. You could see he had abrasions on his legs and his arms. He grabbed his danda and came half trotting and half limping and got back on the bus. No one said a word, and it was dead still. And he turned to all the devotees and he said, "You see, death can come at any moment." And that seared in my brain and my heart. And I will always remember that day. You must be prepared because death can come at any moment.
That's amazing. Tell us about the first time you met Srila Prabhupada.
The first time I actually saw Srila Prabhupada was he was coming in to the Kennedy airport, and there was hundreds of devotees that had come from all over the country to greet Srila Prabhupada at the Kennedy airport. When I saw Srila Prabhupada through the crowd of all the devotees, and I had a basket with rose petals and I was throwing them on the ground, he just glided. He looked like the Paramahansa with a glow about his essence. And he walked so quickly and so even-keeled as if he was floating, not even his feet touching the ground. And I was kind of running backwards with throwing the flower petals from the basket, and he just looked so effulgent. It was just incredible. indeed the Paramahansa. And that was the first time I saw Srila Prabhupada.
Did you see Srila Prabhupada any times after that?
Yes, the next time I saw Srila Prabhupada was in New Vrindavan, later in the year of 1972. And I remember one evening after he had finished giving a lecture, I was not able to attend the lecture. It was just too crowded with a sea of devotees. And I was trying to think of, I was just a little bhaktin. I was trying to think of how can I give something to Srila Prabhupada, some dakshin. I had nothing, no money, nothing. So because I used to separate the milk on the porch, I was doing that while Srila Prabhupada was giving the lecture. I decided I would give him some milk. So I found a small container in the pujari pantry, and I filled it with fresh milk, just separated from the cows. And I waited until the lecture was over, and I knew it was over because all of a sudden there was a tumultuous sound of all the devotees saying, Jai, Srila Prabhupada, as they started pouring out of the temple room, and they came out from the temple building, and they started going down the path to the stairs. And there I was waiting with my little container of milk on the stairs. And Srila Prabhupada had this chadar in the twilight of the summer light. He looked so effulgent, and he had a chadar around his shoulders that gleamed between purple shimmer and green shimmer. And there he came with his cane, looking like the Paramahansa. And as he turned around the corner of the building and started coming down the stairs, there I was with my little container of milk. And I remembered to hold it with my right hand because by birth I'm a left-hander, and that's a no-no. So I handed him, as he came closer, I reached out with my hand to give him the milk, and I said, Srila Prabhupada. And he said, he put his hand on mine, and he said, what is this? And he came to a full stop, and I looked right into his eyes, and he looked into mine. And I said, this is milk for your breakfast for tomorrow. And he said, that is very nice. The next thing I knew, I was laying down in the parking lot doing dandavats as he got in the car, and he pulled off up the road to go to Madhuban.
That's a wonderful story. Okay, I heard that at one point there was some kind of a demoniac person kind of was going to attack you. Tell us about that, please.
Yes, one winter morning I finished my pujari duties. I was living in the old Washington, D.C. temple. I think it was on K Street. And so I was walking home, and it was just sunlight, and I was chanting my japa, and it was a day after a big snowstorm. And as I was making my way back the 8 blocks to the Brahmacharini ashram, at some point as I was getting closer to the ashram, I heard some footsteps behind me. And I kind of glanced over my shoulder, and I saw a person. It looked like a big, hefty person coming closer to me, but walking faster than me. So I kind of picked up speed, but the person was kind of catching up with me. So I kind of darted through the snow between the cars, and just as I reached the stairs to go up to the Brahmacharini ashram entrance, the man grabbed me, and I screamed at the top of my lungs, Nishringadev! Nishringadev! For some unforeseeable reason, he let go of me at that moment, and then he went running off in the distance. And I was so scared, but I think Nishringadev saved the day, literally. Nishringadev.
So is there any other Vishnujanan stories that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, there is another Vishnujanan story I'd like to share with you all. When I was with the roadshow traveling from the Boston temple to the New York temple, the buses used to break down a lot out of the 3 buses. And it took 2 weeks, more or less, to get to New York. We used to stop during the day. We'd go on Sankirtan and book distribution in the middle of the town, in the main street. And Vishnujanan would lead the Sankirtan. And he had this favorite way of singing that led up to the Hare Krishna mantra. But he would sing, hey, you don't have to worry. All your lonely times will soon be gone. Back to Krishna, back to Godhead. All your lonely times will soon be gone. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. And he would sing like that, and everybody would be attracted. And he was the most charismatic, effulgent personality I've ever met in my life. That was Vishnujanan.
So what happened with the 108 sweet balls?
Ah, you ask about the 108 sweet balls. It was during Janmashtami when Srila Prabhupada was in New Vrindavan for the 7-day Srimad Bhagavatam discourse. I got the honor as Bhakti Jini to transfer the plates after they were offered to all the deities on the altar. Well, I was a rascal because I, one by one, hour after hour, when I would clean the plates, I would stash the sweet balls. We're talking about sandesh, rasgulla, para, burfi, ladus, lugdus. So I would stash them in a little pocket over here, and everybody fasted that day because it was Janmashtami. But at midnight, when it was time to break fast, I took my 108 sweet balls to the Brahmacharya ashram and I ate them all, and it was yummy.
And what were some of the other services that you did?
I was a pujari, and I was also a cook and a seamstress. And when I was in New Vrindavan, after I received both first and second initiation from Srila Prabhupada in 1973, I was told that I was now going to be cooking all the offerings. And Ambarish Prabhu was the one who taught me how to cook. In one day, I had to learn all the different offerings. So that was very exciting.
So tell us about Sarvesha's arm on the horse.
Well, Sarveshwari's arm on the horse. That was a story that goes back to New Vrindavan. Hari Griva used to have a horse in New Vrindavan. I guess he acquired it when they first purchased New Vrindavan in 1967. The horse's name was Sunny, and in the wintertime, me, Sarveshwari, and another devotee by the name of Ugrasena used to take turns riding the horse Sunny down from the Vrindavan farmhouse to the main farm, Bahulaban, to get supplies. And we used to have a hiker's carrier pack, and we used to be loaded up with about 150 pounds of supplies, flour, sugar, etc., etc. And one time it was Sarveshwari's turn to ride the horse down to get the supplies, and when she was returning, apparently Sunny didn't want to go over the little stream that went through the road, and he must have reared up and she fell off and broke her arm. So that was the misfortune for Sarveshwari Prabhu.
Why didn't you get any help?
Why didn't we get any help? Well, because with that heavy pack to put on our back and get back on the horse, the saddle, and ride him back to the farm, nobody wanted to help us because they were all brahmacharis. The brahmacharis weren't going to touch the women, right? So we had to figure it out on our own, and it was difficult. But we were strong back then and determined on the behalf of Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Yeah, those were austere days, for sure.
What was the most austere experience that you had?
I can't tell it. I can't tell it on the prompter. I can't.
Okay.
I'll tell you off camera. What the most austere thing you want to know?
Yeah.
Okay. We didn't have an outhouse. And by then it was 12 brahmacharis and one household couple on the upper farm. One of the big austerities was when we had to do our evacuate, I guess you'd call evacuate, either one or two, we had to go in the pitch black up a hill, a steep, slippery hill, and it was just a pit with a few branches to balance on. That was a great austerity. You know what the other austerity was? This one I can tell. One of the great austerities when I was a brahmachari living in the original Vrindavan farm was we had a stove which required chopping wood, and they had built a covered pavilion, but we had to go out there in the pitch black. Me and another brahmachari as partnering up, we had to first use a big long saw to saw the tree into a log, and then we had to take that log and we had to get the axe and we had to chop it into pieces and then bring it inside. We did that all in the pitch black. Unless there was a full moon, we did that in the pitch black. What were we doing the whole time as we were endeavoring to get this accomplished? Chanting Hare Krishna like crazy, because we didn't want to chop our foot or our arm off. That's a true story. You know what else we used to do, Prabhu? To hear the holy name really, really good, all the brahmacharis, we received a 10, I guess it was a 10 gallon, would it be 10 gallon? Yeah, a 10 gallon tin bucket to wash our clothes in, because we didn't have a washing machine. But we also used the bucket, so early in the morning after Mongol Artik, we used to go outside and we used to circuit ambulate around the farmhouse, put the bucket on our head. Oh, you could hear the holy name really good. It would reverberate really nicely. True story. Oh, and you know how we used to get our tilak? Oh my God, in the springtime when everything, when the snow started to melt and this mud would ooze out on the side of the road, and it was like green color. We used to use that not only to mix it with lemon juice to like use instead of, we didn't have brasso, we used that to polish the deity's paraphernalia. We also used that for tilak. It was really, really nice. You want to hear another austere story? Or a story? Because I was the milkmaid at the Bahulapan farm, they had a wraparound porch, and that's where the separator was set up. But in the fall, all these flies, because it was cold at night, even though it was summertime, they would collect on the ceiling of the porch on the house. And we got news from Kirtananda that summer that Srila Prabhupada wasn't going to come back to visit New Vrindavan again until we got rid of the flies. So I don't know how it was, but I was assigned by Kirtananda to get a vacuum cleaner. And every morning I would go out there, and while it was like wall to wall or ceiling to ceiling covered with black flies, I had to vacuum clean them out. But then I would go over here in the back part of the property and I would let them out. So I did that every single day for like about 3 weeks until Srila Prabhupada came. But he came because there was not that many flies. I don't know where they went, but they must have understood. But why me? Why me? I had to do that? But I at least I let them go. So anyway, you don't want to know the story about when they married me off to what was his name? Oh God, I had a flower ceremony. Me, Sarveshwari, and once again Ugrasena. They married us in a flower ceremony, Kirtananda, because they told me this is after the fact. Kirtananda used to sit in his cabin on his rocking chair, and he'd rock back and forth, and he'd say, "It's not you that I want. I want your children." So that's why he wanted to marry, put together a man and woman devotee together right away, or as soon as possible, because he wanted our kids, because he knew he could like mold them, right? So anyway, I had a flower ceremony and I got married to this stranger. What was his name? Begins with M. I'll think of it. It's a blank right now. But anyway, so they married me to this brahmachari. 1973, a month after I got first and second initiation, and so it was still wintry because it was March, Gurpurnim, March. So there I was, we had a flower ceremony where you exchanged garlands, and there I was walking in the middle of the night up to the farm where they had these A-frames that were just for householders, not for brahmacharis, householders. I was walking behind the stranger with a little teeny suitcase. He's chanting, I'm chanting, and I'm thinking, where do I change? Where do I go bathroom? Where do I sleep? I had no idea. This was a stranger, and I never had a relationship with a man before in my life, even though I was 19. It didn't last. It didn't last. He ended up dragging me down this road one day and beating me up because I didn't want to wash his dirty socks in the bucket. I would poke it with a stick. I didn't want to be with him, and I didn't want to be married, and he ended up punishing me for it. So that didn't last. But anyway, I can't remember his name. It's blanked out. Murari Gupta. He was from LA. Later, many years later, I heard through the rumor vines that he became an FBI agent and he got killed. I don't know if that's true or not. Then here I am. This is, years later. I ended up leaving New Vrindavan because they started worshipping Kirtananda on the same level as Srila Prabhupada. Okay? That's why I left. And when I went to ask permission to leave, he just went, go. I can tell a whole story about that, but that's going to be in my book, I guess. So he sent me to Cleveland because Cleveland was under the auspices and the control of Kirtananda Maharaj. I was in Cleveland for 9 months, and Sukha Sagari was the head pujari because she was the temple president's wife, and she was not really following the 4 regular principles and such. And so I don't know, something happened one day, this is like 9 months later, I snapped and I walked out the door and I kept walking. I walked 102 blocks in Cleveland. I don't know where I was going. I ended up downtown in a thrift store. A man felt sorry for me and he gave me, because I was wearing a full sari. And so I figured I needed to change so that I wouldn't be pursued and try to get me back, because I wasn't going to go back to that nonsense. So I went in, I remember going to a thrift store and somebody gave me money for a pair of pants and a shirt, I think it was, man's shirt. When I left that store, the same guy said, "Do you need a ride somewhere? I'll take you to the YMCA or the YWCA." And so I don't know, a stranger, and you're not supposed to trust him. I went with him and he brought me to the YWCA, and on the way we had a conversation where he at one time wanted to be a priest. So he kind of understood when I was telling him my story about how I want to commit to God and follow and be a good servant, but I can't do it when I'm in the association with somebody who's not following what you're supposed to do. He understood. So he paid for me and I stayed overnight in the luxury of a YWCA. I took a shower, I washed my sari, I hung it out. They called me up. They called me in the morning to wake me up at 4 o'clock so I could chant my japa. And then I remember walking around aimlessly, and a bus went by, and it was the devotees, and they were heading to the DC temple. So they brought me on, and I ended up in the Potomac, Maryland temple. How does that work? Anyway, so I was there for 3 years. That's a whole nother pastime story. I was there when Srila Prabhupada left his body in November 14th, 1977, and the reason why I remember it was because that is my birthday. And I remember posting about Vishnu's died to live, carrying the sound around, whatever that 4-line thing is. I remember posting it up there, so I didn't cry or lament. I felt separation, but I understood about Vani and Bapu because that's what Prabhupada taught us. So I got that right away. But anyway, shortly after that, I saved money because I was the comptroller for the treasurer, Tamohara. And I saved money and I went to India the following year. And when I was in India, it was strange because I saw women with no hair, women that were supposed to be widows that had kids. Some women had makeup, some, like shaved, not shaved. I was really bewildered, but I figured maybe it was my nature to be married. So when I came back, I asked Rupanuga, who was the temple president, if I could get married. We're talking about 1978. Srila Prabhupada had already left, and there wasn't that many Prabhupada disciples around that were not either, swamis that took sannyas, or were already married. So one day he called me into his office and he said, "I'd like to take your picture. There's somebody that might want to marry you that's in New York that's a Prabhupada disciple." So he took my picture, a little Polaroid or whatever. I waited 2 weeks and he, apparently with no answer, meant that I was rejected. And you know who it was? Let me see if I can remember his name. He was a famous actor. He was in the famous recording of Sita Ram. He was the one that played Ravana. He had like these dots. Do you remember his name? I don't remember his name offhand. But anyway, he rejected me. Because he was not into women, he was into men. Whatever. A few weeks after that, Rupanuga decided to send me to a devotee, I think his name was Gopal, in the Baltimore temple as a potential husband. So we were supposed to go and have prasadam together, read books together. So he sent me there, and within 2 days I knew that wasn't going to be the one because he wasn't fixed philosophically compared to my knowledge and where I was. So that didn't work out. So I got on the phone, called Rupanuga, and he said, "Okay, come back." He was frustrated. I didn't even unpack my suitcase where they decided to send me and marry me to somebody in the New York temple. Went to the New York temple and they married me to the treasurer of the big New York temple, right, on 340 West 55th Street, Radha Sharna from Santo Domingo. of course, I was the last one to find out that they were only marrying me to him because he needed a green card, no other reason. So that only lasted 5 months. And then shortly after that, I met on my own, or on our own, I met Antima, and he became my husband. I have crazy stories. People wouldn't believe them. One time when I was in the New York Temple, and my husband was in charge of the printing press on the 3rd floor, he had a little A.B. Dick bound together with rubber bands, and he used to print all the mantra cards and the brochures for the Jagannath Festival, right? Rath Yatra, rather. And what was I going to say? We had an associate of ours that was working with Antima in the printing press. His name was Japa Jagya, and he helped my husband. I was also hired by my husband to do typesetting and work having to do with publishing. And so Japa Jagya found a wife that he wanted to marry. He lived where the married couples lived, on the 8th floor, I believe it was. And he, in these little rooms where that were provided for the devotees that lived there, there was these little teeny sinks, but they were supposed to be turned off. You're supposed to go down the hall to the communal place where you do your business and shower and such. So one day he decided he wanted to get water, and he got somehow or another his hands on a wrench, and he opened it up, and he broke the pipe, and it flooded the whole building from the 8th floor down. It was pouring down into the elevator shaft. And it was like the Gundincha, cleansing of the Gundincha temple, as it's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was the most static thing. They tried to get a hold of Adi Keshava, who was the president at the time of the temple, and he was I think he was in the airport on his way to take a flight to India, and he was furious. But the damage had been done. Devotees were there with trash cans and shovels and buckets trying to scoop up all the water and trying to clean it all up. But the whole temple got cleansed. But it was a sight to behold, for sure. All the water pouring on every single floor, all the way down into the basement. Gundincha temple. One of my favorite stories from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay, that's enough for now. I could go on and on. Speaking of the Gundincha temple or breaking a pipe, I think I just broke the pipe.
Tell us a little something more about your remembering of Vishnujanan.
There is something very significant that I will always remember about Vishnujanan when I was with him on the Transcendental Roadshow. When he would lead the kirtan, first of all, his stature was that he was very tall, with very long arms, that I know Srila Prabhupada said was very auspicious. He had the most incredible projecting voice, and when he would chant and lead kirtan, he would raise his hands in the arms, and he would remind me of Lord Chaitanya. His eyes looked like they were filled with the dew of love, and he was always his eyes were upcast as he was chanting. It was incredibly inspiring to hear and see Vishnujanan lead a kirtan. It was the most wondrous thing, and I'll always remember him for that.